We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Ave Maria Stella Dei Mater Alma atque semper Virgo Felix Steli porta
Everybody, Steve with Sense of Fidelity. I'm coming at you on the 15th of March, 2020. I got the month right this time. I screwed up last time, said it was May. So coming at you with the one and only Charles Coulombe. I think most of you guys know who he is. If you don't, born in Manhattan, 1960, stand-up comedian for a few years. He has written a few books you may or may not have heard of. Muse in a Bottle, Classic Horror Stories, Haunted Castles of the World, Haunted Places in America. Rum, get that book. Drink the book.
Drink the book. I'll help.
The Pope's Legion, Puritan's Empire, which is fantastic. Desire and Deception, The White Cockade, Every Man Today, Called Rome, Vicars of Christ, Star Spangled Crown, I almost said heresy, and A Catholic Quest for the Holy Grail. And coming up with a Karl of Austria book, I heard too.
All true, from 10 books in August.
Yes, John told me about it. We'll have to do one on that when it comes out. But talking today about plagues and the Catholic Church and saints that came out of them. So who else better than a Catholic historian to talk about this? Charles, welcome, and great to meet you finally.
Thank you. It's my pleasure entirely. Although, speaking of plagues, I'm here in lockdown here in Austria. I'm not leaving what you see is my world for the next few weeks. I'm not leaving. And who knows how long it's going to last, I've been sentenced to solitary confinement for crimes against the world.
Somebody send that man some light bulbs in case the lights go out.
Well, yeah, that's I'm old enough to remember the great blackout of 65. And that was probably my introduction to the fact that the world is not a safe place. This is most of my classmates are in the process of leaving right now. They haven't left already. But this has taken a big toll on them because they're kids. And this is the first time reality has come up to them and smacked them that it's not fun. I mean, it just isn't fun. Some of you will remember the fabulous 9/11, of course, which was I was a mile and a half from the Pentagon was hit, which wasn't as amusing as promised. The '92 riots in L.A. Those were a good time, if ever there was one. I've seen a share of insanity. This is big. This is a much larger scale. But keep the home fires burning, gang. I mean, there's not a lot else you can do.
Amen. So give us talk some hope. The plagues that really took off, like the Black Plague, killed.
Well, the Black Plague that killed, all in all, about half the population of Europe. In some places, as much as 2/3. And you have to understand that we all descend from people who lived through that. That is to say, in your body, as we speak, are the genes of people who lived through that horrible time and rebuilt what was left. And that's why inevitably when people ask me, well, things are so terrible now. How can anyone have children in such an awful time? And my response is always the way your fathers did after the Black Plague. That's how. In other words, in a certain sense, we've been here, we've done that. The plague in the 1300s was the most horrific thing we know. Now, there were lesser outbreaks of the plague. One of the things you got to remember about viruses is that over time, they tend to get less and less lethal.
Mhm.
Now, not always. Sometimes they mutate and become worse, but usually they get less and less so. Now, the reason for that's actually very simple. If a virus is lethal, it kills its host.
Mhm.
And if its host dies, guess what? Yeah. So, because you see, outside the host, the virus faces a very unwelcoming and uncaring world. It's very tough if you're a little virus. You're very tiny.
Dry
There's
things
a
are
big
tough.
world out there. It's got sunlight and wind, and it's very, very upsetting. So here it is. All you're looking for is a nice warm host to live in. The only problem is you're killing it. Well, over time, remember, you don't have a brain, so it's not like you sit around thinking about these things. But as a result, over time, you lose usually your lethality, if that's a word. And so it is with the Black Plague. The outbreaks grew fewer and fewer. There was a really good one in London, 1665.
Mhm.
We had a very small outbreak in Los Angeles, California, in 1929, Black Plague on Clara Street, which was pretty small. Then, but that, of course, was after the great influenza pandemic of 1918. You know, it's an interesting thing my brother was mentioning to me today. We came equipped, as many people our age did, with a whole phalanx of elderly relatives.
Mhm.
And these people had been through World War One. They've been through the Depression. They've been through World War Two. The older ones have been through the pandemic. Interesting thing. They all talked about the wars. They talked about the Depression. They never talked about the pandemic, even though they lived through it.
Mhm.
And even though, in retrospect, it had certain effects on them, but they didn't talk about it, which is kind of a curious thing. I don't know why it is. It may be because in a pandemic, unless you're a doctor or a nurse or something like that, all you can really do is sit, hope it doesn't get you, and then you survive and you don't.
Mhm. It kind of reminds me of, I remember people would ask my dad about the war in Vietnam, and he never mentioned it. So
Well,
might be
that's the,
something like that to push off.
very possibly, very, very possibly. Who's to say? And it could be that, you see, there's so much we don't know about this thing. 80% of people who get it have no symptoms. Uh, the larger proportion of the remainder are mildly affected. It's a small number statistically and in terms of percentage that actually suffer terribly or worse yet die, but that number is enough to fill up your health system, kill it.
Mhm.
That's what's happened in Italy. But having said all of that, of course, then the other problem you've got is that your healthcare people are sometimes stuck with trying to save an older person
Mhm.
versus another older person or a younger person with an underlying problem. So it's a mess. But the important thing to remember uh, is that reality doesn't change because you live through a situation like this. One of the reasons I firmly believe for the problems of the church is the experience of a lot of senior churchmen during the two world wars, especially the Second World War.
Mhm.
I think it shook their confidence in the faith. What we've learned since Vatican II is that no, though the faith really is true, nothing changed. And things have gone, I mean, stop and think, if you will. This is wide ranging, but I do have a point. Uh, in 1963, 62, JFK was president of the United States. The Catholics in America were the wealthiest in the world. They had bailed out the Holy See not once, but twice. Archbishop Sheen was the biggest man on television.
Mhm.
This was the epitome of what Benedict XVI called a confessionally neutral state, nevertheless illumined by gospel values. That was Kennedy's America,
Mhm.
or Eisenhower's America, if you want. All right. In that light, you read somebody like Pius IX, who predicted that a confessionally neutral state would inevitably degenerate into a anti-Catholic tyranny. It seemed crazy.
Mhm.
The United States had just saved the world in 2 world wars and was keeping the communists at bay. Just madness. Except that with the passage of time, 2020 hindsight,
Mhm.
you read Pius IX now, and he reads like a prophet.
Mhm.
But that's because he was basing his views not on his immediate perceptions of what was going on around him, but by principles that have stood the test of time.
Mhm.
So, where am I going with this? Well, the church has dealt with plagues time and time and time again. St. Charles Borromeo, who we think of today as a great reformer and all that, he was that.
Mhm.
But he was also Archbishop of Milan during a terrible, terrible plague. What did he do? Masses and processions. St. Gregory the Great, who we think of for a lot of reasons, Gregorian chant being one of them. And if you're Byzantine Catholic, the liturgy of the pre-sanctified, which you've been going through in Lent, is also the liturgy of St. Gregory Dialogos. St. Gregory the Great, as he's called by the Greeks, because he composed it while he was the papal envoy in Constantinople. There's a little thing for you.
Mhm.
But more than that, the plague breaks out in Rome.
Mhm.
He had daily processions praying for an end to it. And one day, he had a vision, looked at the top of Hadrian's mausoleum, and he saw the Archangel Michael put his sword back in his sheath. And he knew that the plague was over. But it also led him to give Hadrian's mausoleum a new name,
Mhm.
Castel Sant'Angelo.
Mhm.
And that's why there's a statue of St. Michael on the top of it today. So, where is all this taking us? Pestilences and plagues, like every other, like wars, like famines, like all the other things that from time to time afflict the human race, produce saints. They produce people who stick to their guns and do their best for their fellow man, their fellow sufferers during the plague. It's a very, very important thing to bear that in mind. And there are other things too to look at. I'm sure they'll have to close the abortion bills. I can't imagine they're going to keep well. Are they really going to keep functioning? Really?
I don't know. I saw them on Twitter. They were pretty active today. I couldn't
We'll
tell
see
you if I was inside. You know, I don't know at Ground Zero, but they haven't
we'll
said
see how
anything
long.
online.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Right.
I bet they're not open to New Rochelle. Yeah, you know, I can't think of anything crazier than to continue with that at a time like this. You know, I also think there will probably be, after, if you guys get the same kind of quarantine we've got here in Europe, I guarantee you in 9 months there'll be a quick jag in births, quick spike.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else to do. I'm old enough to remember the great blackout of '65, and that's what happened. There was a quick jump, and people were bored. You know, the
Don't even watch Avengers so many times.
yeah, you know, and if the with the when the power was off back in '65, you didn't even have that. You know. And all you had was the martini makings and a dark house. It was terrible. But no, seriously, I I wouldn't be too terribly upset, ladies and gentlemen. Above all, don't panic. I mean, firstly, it's not going to help. You know, we've come through these kinds of things before. We'll come through them again. People are all excited about the death rate of the disease. Well, not only do more people die of the flu so far every year in this country, or not this country, but our country, where you are, not the country I'm in, but for far more people die thanks to abortion than die of the flu. And we don't mind that. That's okay. It's not a problem. Well, it will become a problem when you and I, and me sooner than you, are thinking we're going to get Social Security. Because so many of the people who are going to be paying to keep me in beer and Skittles will be dead. They won't have been born. And the likelihood of my retiring to a diet of dog food and scotch gets, a lot higher. Now, I have to admit, especially because some of you are going to be in panic buying mode, regardless of what I say, I have to admit that my long-term phrase, retiring to dog food and scotch, has an actual origin. I didn't just make it up. No. This is a true story.
Go for it.
A friend of mine was throwing a party at Beechwood Canyon in Hollywood. I'm going back now 25 years, if I'm going back a day. And the party was great, but we were running low on food and booze. So a friend of mine and I were sent out to go to the Beechwood Market, which is an upscale market at the head of Beechwood Canyon, and get more food and booze. So there we go. We saw this beautifully dressed old woman, white hair, earrings, but appropriately dressed, for a woman her age. The kind of woman you'd love to have your grandmother as your grandmother if your grandmother was a terrible sophisticate, this woman looked great. But she was pushing a shopping cart. It was filled with lots of dog food cans and bottles of scotch and nothing else. And she's pushing this cart. And so my friend says to me, "What do you think that means?" And I looked at her and I said, "It's easier to keep down when it's marinated." So ever since then, when people ask me what my retirement plan is, I tell them dog food and scotch.
Not 78,000 rolls of toilet paper?
No. You can't drink toilet paper. You'll find that out. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to let you in on another secret of panic buying. If you're going to the store right now, ladies and gentlemen, and you get there and you'll find the rolls of toilet paper are all gone, the Kleenex is still there. And you can use it for the same purpose.
You have paper towels.
Yeah, but people don't seem to catch it. And the funny thing is, I got the last 6 rolls of toilet paper in my local store here. And you know why? Because they were under the Kleenex. I'm serious. They were on the bottom shelf under the Kleenex. So people everything else was gone. But I looked down there, because I was going to get some Kleenex boxes. I don't care. I looked down and I see these 6 rolls. And nobody bothered because they were protected by the Kleenex. So.
There was that movie with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. I can't remember the name of it, but they used shells. They didn't have toilet paper. I saw a meme with Sly going, I wish I remembered how to use those shells.
Oh. Well, don't forget our ancestors 125 years ago used the Sears catalog.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
yep.
And they survived despite the possibilities of ink poisoning. So, no, I would urge you, ladies and gentlemen, use this time, especially if you're in lockdown the way I am. Not that I'm bitter. Use this time to expand your prayer life, to read all those things you wanted to read. Take this time as a gift. Don't take it as a punishment. And thanks to the gift of the miracle of the internet and all that, my heavens, you get caught up on all the old TV and movies you can stand. The whole Hammer House of Horror is on TV, on YouTube. You can watch Captain Kangaroo. You could watch the Hollywood Palace when I was a kid. There's just Waiting for God for the BBC. That's there. You really, ladies and gentlemen, if you're stuck with enforced idleness and you've got Wi-Fi and the internet, don't sweat it. You've got entertainment galore. Food, of course, may be a problem. I hope not. I can tell you that Austria is 90% it takes care of 90% of its own food.
Mhm.
So, and they are really they're going to cancel flights. If I wanted to go home very shortly, I wouldn't have the ability anyway, because Chancellor Kurz is going to be cutting off all the flights from Vienna Airport. So your question might be, well, when is he going to do that? And he's said, and you know, for certain reasons, I'm not really a great fan of his anymore. I used to like him, but not so much now. But he said something I really did like. They asked him, when will you shut down the airport? And he said, when the last Austrian comes home. And I thought that was kind of a decent thing. When the last Austrian comes home, then the country's going to go down into complete shutdown. In hopes that in a few weeks, that it's almost weirdly comforting in a sick way.
Yeah.
But the United States, of course, is a very very different kettle of fish. So I would advise you, ladies and gentlemen, do what they tell you. Wash your hands. Don't lick the sidewalk, which is probably never a good idea anyway.
Did you see the guy at the NCAA? It was NBA. It was the Utah Jazz guy. He was mocking everything about it, and he showed the press by licking all the microphones, and then he got it.
See,
don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Let us learn.
Well, and it's so easy to get, especially because so many of the carriers don't have any symptoms at all. Mm-hmm. You've got it. If you get it, ladies and gentlemen, you've got an 80% chance of never knowing you've got it unless you take a test. Mm-hmm. So be careful. Be careful with the people you meet, especially if you've got older family or friends or whatever living with you. Be sure to get tested if you can, but stay away from hospitals. They have enough trouble. They're going to have a lot more.
Right. So basically you're saying be smart and courteous.
Yeah. And don't, we'll get through this, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't Planet Krypton. When the sun's not about to go supernova, Jor-El is not sending Kal-El in a little rocket. So, it's not The Walking Dead. It's not The Strain. It's not Falling Skies. It's none of those things. I actually had a kind of interesting thought, interesting to me anyway, and that was that Falling Skies took place around the same time that The Walking Dead started out. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you had The Strain. Now, I thought to myself, well, this is odd. Boston's attacked by UFOs, New York by vampires, and Georgia by zombies. I mean, what a horrible thing. And worse yet, imagine, if you will, if the aliens in Falling Skies came to the Earth just after it had been devastated by zombies. Mm-hmm. How would they deal with that? See, these are the thoughts that real pop culture people worry about. Wake up at night. I don't know. What would they have done? Well, who's to say? I
was telling somebody about I Am Legend, and I need to go get a DVD of Shrek.
Yeah. And gosh, which version did you look at? Oh no, that was the first version of those. There were three of them that were made from the book I Am Legend by my late acquaintance. I actually met the man, Robert.
I can't think of his name.
Gosh, I met the man too. It's Block, Robert Block. Mm-hmm. Interesting guy, member of the Lovecraft Circle. But he used to say, I have the heart of a small boy. I keep it on my desk in a jar. But at any rate, gallows humor, ladies and gentlemen, gallows humor. But He did I Am Legend. He wrote the story. And of course, that first became The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. It became The Omega Man with Charlton Heston, which I have a particular fondness for because it's so 70s you can shriek. And then lastly, there was I Am Legend with
Will Smith.
Which was not
The Fresh Prince.
Yeah, the Fresh Prince. I mean, he was all right, but the Omega Man to me was just it's how I feel right now. Frankly, I could be Charlton Heston, sequestered in his. It is. I've got everything I want. I've got music. I can watch TV. I can eat. I can drink. I've got books galore. And outside they are waiting. Then, of course, in the movie, he had his house all done up with machine gun emplacements and barbed wire and all this stuff. Well, it so happened that the apartment building that my brother and I had lived in, it's not really an apartment building, but a quadruplex, that my brother and I had lived in when we first came to California with our parents in Hollywood, owned by the famous phony psychic Criswell. It came up for sale. So I suggested to my brother, who's owns real estate and that sort of thing. I said, why don't you buy it? We could refurbish it as a single family thing and move in. And he looked at me and he said, if I did that, I'd have to do the whole Omega Man thing with the, to make it a suitable living place. Yeah, suitable living place for my children. Anyway. These random thoughts come to mind, ladies and gentlemen. I wish I could tell you that I've been drinking up a storm. I haven't. I haven't had a drop today, which is probably why I'm feeling so out of it. But
my wife's favorite line to me is, "What's wrong with you? There's something wrong with you." Talking to me when I say stuff.
It is. I mean, we are in a very strange place right now. We all are. And I'm strangely enough, although it's odd to be locked down like this, it's strangely gratifying in a sense. Strangely, what's the word? Not gratifying, but you feel protected, if you will. But in the case of the States, you really couldn't do something like this. So I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know how it's going to play out in my native Los Angeles. I'm very worried because you have legions of the homeless. And you can't quarantine them. And they will, they could easily overwhelm the hospitals in LA. But what are you supposed to do? Shoot them? Hard stuff, ladies and gentlemen, hard stuff. So be prepared for a certain amount of unpleasantness. But again, it's not the end of the world. We are, in 6 months or 8, things will have returned somewhat to what they were, I suppose. The world's economy is going to take a huge shellacking out of this. And there'll be every attempt to blame the president for not reacting in time or reacting too soon or whatever. And the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that nobody could have foreseen this. I mean, they knew that given our global setup, that there was a chance there'd be a pandemic of this sort. But you never really know until it happens. You just don't. I mean, and the reaction of the church in some places to close down churches completely. I don't know that that's going to fly very well in the aftermath. I don't know that the church is going to look very good. It's interesting too that some places, including my own Archdiocese of Los Angeles, have forbidden communion on the tongue. But the Archbishop of Portland, Oregon, but in the Diocese of San Bernardino next door, forbade communion in the hand.
Really?
Yeah. The hand is much dirtier than the tongue. You've got.
Where's that been in the news?
The Archbishop of Portland, Oregon, has did something very unprecedented for church people. That is, he talked to real experts who knew what they were talking about.
Who knew?
Go figure. I don't get it. In my case, I would have gone to a tarot reader or something to, come up with some really, really solid advice. But at any rate, thank God I'm not a bishop.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, exactly. You're on the street. You know what kicks.
The man
No,
on the street.
I don't know. But what ended up happening was that he issued a statement saying that there's no real difference in terms of safety between the two types of reception, which I think is probably true. Here in Vienna, it's the Archbishop is heavily suggested. Of course, the churches are all closing, but before that happened, he said, "Well, the churches aren't closing, but the masses will not be public." Uh, but at any rate, he said that while communion on the hand is advised, he couldn't forbid communion on the tongue. So I will say too that if you kneel for communion, the priest is much more easily able to put it on your tongue with much less chance. Yeah, just drop it right on.
Diocese here, Raleigh. He's good to go. No, nothing. Masses are still going, and processions, whatever the priests want to do. Diocese of Charlotte. The bishop's standing going. The priests are doing down the street processions, Eucharistic adoration. We had mass today. Masses aren't canceled. Now they're limited because of the governor saying 100 a let cap on people in the building. So just we had all three masses at the parish we go to, and we were even three parishes were streaming live. So yeah,
we had a last mass of the parish here, and then a Eucharistic procession through the streets of the town to the Mariensäule, which is every town in Central Europe: Austria, Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, Croatia, Slovenia. In the middle of the town, there'll be a Pestsäule or a Mariensäule, which is a column thanking the Virgin Mary for saving the town in past plagues. So it's the perfect place for a procession to go and for the priest to bless the town with the Blessed Sacrament of the Monstrance, which is what he did tonight. From now on, what's that?
We have a pontifical solemn high mass on Thursday for St. Joe. So I'll be filming that one just to let everybody know we ain't gone anywhere.
Well, we're still doing they're still doing masses here at the school. They're private, and those of us who are left won't actually be able to attend them. We'll be streaming them, but we will be able to go get communion in small groups, no more than 5 at a time, because the law is that as of tomorrow, or as of 6 minutes from now, there'll be no gatherings of more than 5 people.
Oh wow!
Oh, it's very draconian.
Wow.
If you go out on the street, there'll be cops running around. If you go out on the street and you don't have a reason to be there, they'll ask you where you're going, what's your reason for going. About the only thing they'll carry any ice is if you're going on a weekly trip to the market, and the markets are stay open. But they don't want you going more than once a month, or once a week, rather. So, it's tough stuff.
So you mentioned Gregory and Charles Borromeo. Who else? I love Rocco.
Well, yeah, Saint Roche was a tremendous fellow. He was living under his parents' staircase for years. They're not even knowing it. That was pretty tactical. But another one who's being prayed to a lot in this part of the world right now is Saint Corona, who's also invoked against the plague. There are actually quite a few saints. Of course, Our Lady Health of the Sick, Saint Luke, Saints Cosmas and Damian, Saint Raphael. All of these saints are invoked against the sick, against the plague. And they should be invoked now. I mean, really, ladies and gentlemen, you should pray now as you've never prayed before. For those of you in places where the Blessed Sacrament is no longer available, think of how many times, and I'm as bad, Think of how many times you miss Mass for no real reason. You were lazy.
Mhm.
Because, our Lord will always be there.
Mhm.
Think of how often we took him for granted. Well, no. He's not always there. Sometimes bad things happen. If, which God forbid, some of you find yourselves in terrible situations, or you find that your city is in a horrible situation, think of what your city has done. Think of the abortions.
Mhm.
Think of the profanations of marriage.
Mhm.
Think of all that. My longtime acquaintance, John Jmerak, wrote a very interesting article. What if I test positive but identify as not having the disease? And you may think that John was being funny, but he wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't being funny at all. And when he said, stop and think of what people are doing to children right now,
Mhm.
enforcing them into gender reassignment. Think of what people are doing with this whole drag queen story time.
Yeah, yeah.
This is horrible. This is horrific. Think of Pachamama. You know, uh, we are living in times, ladies and gentlemen, where the leadership, however you want to qualify them, and all of us to a greater or lesser degree, have done horrible, terrible things.
Mhm.
The four crimes that cry out to heaven for vengeance are the stuff of life for modern Western society. So why should we be surprised if every now and then we get a little response
Mhm.
from heaven to our message to heaven?
It's like the
I mean,
lessons in the first week of Lent.
yeah. I mean, this is a weird Lent.
Mhm.
The whole world is being made to observe Lent this year. I pray to God that it's over by Easter, and it may actually be. That would be very strange, but I mean, it might. Wouldn't it be bizarre if the bulk of this thing subsides by Easter?
Mhm.
It'd be very strange. I have no reason to think it will. There's hope that when the weather gets hotter, it'll abate. But it's 100 degrees in Australia right now.
Yeah, who knows?
Nobody knows. And then, of course, the other great fear is that it may die down this year, but it might come back next year.
Mhm.
That's what the Spanish flu did. We don't know. And the truth of it is, ladies and gentlemen, and this is something that you should really take away from tonight, if you take away nothing else. We've never known, really. We have this illusion of security we've built up. But you could be hit by a car. You could die of an aneurysm.
Mhm.
We think we're safe, but we're not. We never are. We never have been. All this is really doing is reminding us of the truth of our lives here on earth. That's all it's doing. It's scary and it's frightening. I'm scared. I'm frightened. But we also know, as I've said at the very beginning, I'll say it again and again, our fathers went through worse.
Mhm.
And if these are not the last days, then our descendants will probably go through worse again.
Mhm.
It's the nature of life. When I'd come up with problems for my old father, and I'd say, "Oh, this is terrible, Dad." He'd say, "Yes, yes, it is, son. But it's your own fault for coming to a fallen world. Next time, come to an unfallen world, and you
Mhm.
won't have these problems." So, well, thanks a lot. But set about truth to it. We have to accept the fact, as our ancestors did, that plagues and famine and unrest and horror are part of life. And we pray that they don't happen in our time. You see so many prayers that ask for a quiet and peaceful life. Why? Well, it's because most lives historically have not been that way. So we pray that they will be. beyond that, we pray very, very hard that we merit heaven. And that, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you go through here, if it ends up with you in heaven, doesn't matter.
Remember, there's a sermon that one of the priests did. They talked about Lent, and he goes, "You have 40 days to prove God that you love Him." And I was thinking, what about now? It's how what you got 2 routes to take. Forget about it. Persevere day by day.
Well, that's all you can do. And as far as forgetting about it goes, that's not really an option either.
No.
And as I say, take this time as a time to pray, to study. And when you're not praying and studying, take it as a time to relax in ways that you couldn't do in normal times. Don't panic, don't hoard. Do what the authorities tell you. I mean, they may not know anything, but they know more than you do. It's not saying much, but, and above all, don't think that anything has really changed. It hasn't. Good is still good. Evil is still evil. Getting the global machine started again is probably going to be a bit tough. It's been interesting shutting it down. Getting it started again will take a while. The economy will take some hits, maybe really bad ones. Who knows? A lot depends on how long it lasts and where. But whatever happens, God is still in charge. He's still the King, Christ the King, still. And you and I, as his subjects, have an obligation to, in the immortal words of the British Propaganda Office during the Second War, keep calm and carry on.
Amen.
It's all anybody could do, and I guarantee you, St. Charles Borromeo would have given you the same advice.
Yep. It was a church building for a reason, so keep pounding, as they say here in Charlotte.
Yep. All you Tar Heels there, checking.
Man, I'd be so mad if I played ball in college. We made it to the junior college national championships. I can't imagine those guys that just got the NCAA taken away from them. I know that's not the same thing on a spiritual level, but just for those guys 18, 19 years old going, as you brought up the Tar Heels, basketball's a big thing right now, going, oh, man.
Oh, listen, my classmates here, what this has done to the semester, I mean, basically what's being talked about, they're talking about maybe trying to carry out classes online like this, or maybe extending the semester by 3 weeks in June if we're back here by then. Which of course, if you're a 19, 20, 22, 23-year-old kid, this is the end of the world. But I got a good laugh out of them by a poster. I tell you about a poster I saw when I was in my 20s. It showed this blonde girl. And some of the girls who were standing there were blonde, so of course they didn't appreciate it. But it showed this blonde girl clutching her handkerchief, and there's a mushroom cloud in the background. And she's a model, obviously. And she says, "Nuclear war, there goes my career." And I said, kids, you've got to get a certain perspective. I know it's inconvenient. I understand this. But,
your selfie backgrounds might not change for a couple days.
Yeah. You may have a little bit of difficulty. A little bit of difficulty establishing, connections with your teachers, but it could be so much worse. So just, and of course, these kids, this is the first time they've been through something like this. Now, mind you, this is this is an event like World War II, really. And I myself have never been through anything quite like this, but You know, we had 9/11, we had the LA riots, the great blackout, as I say, my life started with. We had the Hong Kong flu.
Mhm.
Again, none of these were nearly as big as this, but it prepares you for when everybody loses it.
Mhm.
And I told the kids, I said, you live long enough, you're my age, you're going to go through more of this crap. It just won't. If
Welcome to the
this is
party, pal.
if this is the only one you ever go through, number one, good. You know, please God, I pray that this is as bad as it ever gets for you for your whole lives.
Mm.
But I wouldn't count on it. I said, to be honest, I was hoping at 60 that I'd somehow be able to slide out the last 20 or 30 years of my life without going through another catastrophe. It didn't happen. It didn't. Here I am. It didn't work out, but it beats the alternative.
Yep. Nope.
You
Keep your sense
know
of
it.
humor out there.
No, listen, you've got to, and that's the last point I'll make is your sense of humor. Keep it. You know, don't fail to laugh. I remember seeing films of the British in the underground in London during the Blitz.
Mhm.
You know, they're being bombed and they're singing "Roll Out the Barrel." You know, because what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
It's we sang tonight the Parting Glass, uh, which was very poignant. And the kids were all, gee, aren't you going home, Uncle Charles? And I said, no. I said, I've got a much better chance of catching it standing in those lines you're going to go through than staying here.
Mhm.
And at 60, it may or may not be more of a problem for me than it's going to be for you. Now, another 10 years, if I was 70, it would definitely be more of a problem. But I said, you guys get home, just don't give it to your grandparents.
I'm sure you saw the Italian video of them singing in the rooms, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, God bless the Italians. I'll tell you. You know, so one of the things that I saw, they were singing the Sanfedisti anthem,
Mhm.
which was the anti-revolutionary Italian, you know, Neapolitan song. I thought, yeah, okay. But you know, I think I mentioned to you on Facebook. I posted and I said that the president of the United States should use. I'm very surprised that he's not using one of the most powerful weapons in our armory against this disease, the Supreme Court. I say that just as they're able to change the nature of marriage, even the nature of humanity at their will, they should be able to sign an injunction or something against the virus that'll put a flight to. I mean, it won't ever know what happened.
They probably got Darth Vader and Ginsburg locked up underground somewhere to keep her alive.
Well, yeah, she probably pre-buried her in her coffin to keep her safe. You know, that chick, I'll tell you, talking about Night of the Living Dead. Gosh, she's really wow. But she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to give up. You know, because she's afraid of what the Trumpster would replace her with.
Oh.
You know, and mind you, if I were an insane old lady on the bench, I'd probably feel the same way.
Mm.
You know, I don't blame her, I guess, in that sense. But no, it be of good cheer, ladies and gentlemen. There's really nothing more you can do except that. St. Charles Borromeo, St. Gregory the Great, St. Rocco, all these saints. One of the things you find about them is they did their duty, they just carried on, and they kept slugging away until either the problem was solved or they were dead.
Mhm.
That's all we can do, ladies and gentlemen. Keep slugging along until the problem is solved or you're dead.
Amen. Appreciate it, Charles.
Very welcome. My
You have a
pleasure
good night.
entirely.
No, appreciate it. The pleasure's on this side of the pond.
Well, and just remember, I'll be safe if bored.
Say hi to Vinny for me when you do your show.
Sure shall. That's coming up Saturday. We did one. You'll see it Monday, tomorrow.
Okay, yep.
And I have plague information.
All right. There we
I
go.
do.
Sliding that one in for everybody, a little teaser.
You bet. Drink lots of liquids, kids.
God bless you, bud, and I will talk soon.
Righto. God bless you. Take care.